Welcome to Victoria Rumble Room, one of life's little pleasures. And I'm Robin Adair in deepest, darkest Vancouver Island, and speaking about deep and dark, across in his dark, mysterious lair is the Croatian sensation himself, John Jurisic. John, great to see you.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Johnny Boris Ladislav Judicic, for those that care. He'll tell you, it's not just one of life's little pleasures. It's actually becoming kind of relevant to a whole bunch of crazy people who watch some of our platforms. We're getting extraordinary feedback on TikTok and Instagram with some of our rants. Like a lot of people, tens of thousands of people are listening to some of the stuff that we're saying. So it's becoming
Especially
more than
stuff
just
around the COVID. And I know you've got some thoughts on the COVID as well.
Well, other big issues are trying to intercept what is the biggest issue of all, which is how are we dealing with this health crisis? And I continually think that somehow or another, medically, we're moving forward. But we're not, because people are refusing to do what is being medically advised of them. Take the vaccine, wear the mask. So now they have all these rights to inflict illness on the rest of us. Give me a break. Now they have all these rights to inflict illness on the hospital workers whom they are protesting in front of. I can't believe the stupidity of this, Robin. As you can see, I'm at a loss.
Well, John, we feel exactly the same way. And you know, it is so un-Canadian. So un-Canadian. For this last year and a half, 7 o'clock at night for the longest time, people would get out and bang pots and pans, honoring the courage of our healthcare workers who are in the hospitals helping people with COVID-19 with no vaccinations. They were in there doing their best, even if they were at risk, to try to save people with COVID-19. Now we have the vaccinations. Now we want everyone to get vaccinated so we can get back to some semblance of normalcy. And I think I saw a report last week that showed that there was, 140,000 Canadians or 140,000 British Columbians over the age of 12 who still haven't had a vaccination. Over 90% of the people in the hospital who are seriously sick from COVID-19 are unvaccinated. And then a few of them have had one shot and a handful have had vaccines. But, you know, the really serious cases are the unvaccinated. I don't see why people can't get that.
Robin, I couldn't agree more. We keep saying this every week. We've been saying this every week for 6 months. This is where I'm at. I don't get it. There's a pathway to solving the problem. And people are exhibiting behavior, ignoring the pathway. For what? For what? Oh, freedoms. Freedoms? Are you kidding? Go live in Eastern Europe for a week.
Well, you know, John, and I wonder if it's because we've all been pent up for the last year and a half and the COVID thing's been out there and people haven't been able to get out very much, that we're seeing so much bad behavior. I mean, it's not Canadian to throw rocks at politicians during an election. People who are throwing rocks at Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, on the campaign trail, that's appalling behavior. It has no place in society. These young protesters who are upset about what's going on at Fairy Creek and Old Growth, that's fine. If you want to protest up there and you're prepared to be arrested for it, well, then, you know, you're accountable. You're going to be arrested. That's the way it works. Then you decide to go down and block off the bridges, to block off the streets of Victoria, to block off the Johnson Street Bridge and have an enormous banner up that says, abolish the police. And what kind of a message is that? What's going on, John? I'm sick and tired about the way our justice system works, and in many cases, doesn't work. A case in point, the situation in Vic West where a police officer was assaulted by a man who is still on the loose, And our police officer now faces life-altering injuries. It's terrible. And if this chap gets caught, what happens? Does he go through the prison system? Does he even go to prison? Is it a revolving door? Why are people like this on the street in the first place? If you do the crime, you should do the time. If you're an addict, you should have the choice of jail or treatment. We should have treatment for our addicts, but they shouldn't be on the street. For the mentally ill, there should be institutions to help them. They shouldn't be on the street. We have to deal with this crime problem. Politicians don't seem to have a solution. It's disgraceful.
Right on. Here's where we used to be. Person X would have a viewpoint on how we're doing stuff. Person Y would have an alternate viewpoint. Two pathways to the same objective. Now, we just have stuff broken and no solutions. Crime is going on in Victoria.
It's going on all across the country. It's happening across the country. And we're going to talk more about that in a few moments with Howard Galganov, who is somebody I've dealt with over the years, outspoken English rights activist from the province of Quebec, who now lives in Williamstown, Ontario, right on the Quebec border, who is not enamored at all with any of the national leaders in this federal election race. And he'll give us a look-see at what's going on in the mindset of the electorate in Quebec and in Ontario. And let's face it, whatever they decide to do in those two provinces is probably going to decide what happens in this coming election. And another issue, John, that we're also going to talk about before we get to Howard, though, is the housing crisis, the expensive homes, and what the parties have to offer to solve this problem.
Yet again, COVID, crime, homelessness, huge, massive issues. We're talking about them. We have expert guests who know about these issues. Kevin Sing, yet again, realtor from DFH Realty, has some thoughts on the federal election race and the issue of housing costs, the shortage of affordable housing, one of many huge issues that we're all dealing with. So we're going to ask him, how are the parties approaching and providing solutions? Liberals providing, promising, not providing, promising, big difference. $2.5 billion to create 35,000 affordable homes. New laws to stop the flipping of properties, and a 2-year moratorium on offshore residents buying homes in Canada. NDP says it'll create 500,000 new homes over 10 years. Okay. Place a 20% foreign buyers tax in place and create 30-year mortgages. That might work. While the Conservatives, third realistic party in this race, while the Conservatives are saying they'll build 1 million homes over 3 years and convert 15% of federal property towards housing. Oh, that sounds cool. While for the next 2 years, banning foreign investors from buying in Canada. So Kevin Sing, which program do you like?
Quite frankly, all three parties come up short. The unfortunate part is the ruling party doesn't have a clue, because their solution to make housing more affordable is to add more taxes to housing. And that's really troublesome, but that seems to be the only solution the Liberals have. And quite frankly, I don't understand where they've been the last 3 years when this housing turnaround had started, because it seemed to escape their notice until now. The NDP solution, again, is just more taxes, and actually it's all demand side. The Conservatives at least have addressed the supply side to some degree. It's not foreign buyers per se. You can actually, to some degree, work on the foreign investor, which is somebody not intending from another country, not intending to live here and buying a property. But the vast majority, I mean, if you think about that, if you're a foreign investor, you're providing housing. You're actually buying product that other people will rent, which is part of the problem. We don't have enough rental housing. Municipalities spend way too much time to approve of new housing developments. If we can get the supply lines in shape and where we're actually providing housing in a more effective and cost-effective manner, then you wouldn't have this gross distortion in the purchase price. Interest rates are going to remain low for a significant amount of time. If you want to help affordability for particularly first-time buyers, I'll go back to the 30-year amortization and you can get the mortgage costs or the monthly costs down for purchasers. But in the meantime, in Greater Victoria, almost $80,000 per unit, that's single family, that's condo, that's townhouse. For every single unit built, almost $80,000 is municipal taxes and fees. So every time you hear municipal politicians screaming about affordable housing, they're part of the problem. They're a large part of the problem. And the federal government and provincial governments have the ability to stop that practice.
Well, that was well said, Kevin Singh, and we really like to have that kind of local input on a big issue like this, which of course affects real estate right across the country. And speaking across the country, we are now going to be leaping across to the province of Ontario to speak to Howard Galganov, who, I've known Howard for a long time. It's been many years since the last time I spoke to him on any kind of a radio or television platform. So this is very exciting. Howard has located to Eastern Ontario, but for many years was an outspoken critic of the Quebec language laws, Bill 101 in the province of Quebec, and still has a lot to say about what's going on in politics in Canada today and this election. So let's zoom Howard in. And with us in the Rumble Room is, oh my God, Howard Galganov. After what, 22 years, Howard, we're back on the air together. So good to see you.
Well, it's good to see you, and it's 22 years, but it's like yesterday. You know, I thought about this. We spoke last night, and to me, last night was almost as if we spoke yesterday or the day before.
Right,
so I'm looking forward to this, and a new friend.
Yeah, and a new friend. Well, I now have met you for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, but Robin certainly has indicated that you're an opinionated person, and that's what we like on the Victoria Rumble Room. So let's start. Let's just throw it out there. Federal election. We're sitting here, Robin and I, on the West Coast. You're arguably in the whole meat of the thing, Ontario. Surprisingly, Trudeau takes a dive in the first week. Seems to be coming back. Come on, tell us what you think is going on, please.
Well, we have an election that nobody wants. So I don't just live in Ontario. I'm right on the cusp of Quebec. So if I want to, I can walk across the Quebec border. I hate using that word to describe divisions between Canada, the provincial line. So I can walk across the provincial line, or in 5 minutes, I can drive across the provincial line. My doctors are still in Quebec. My dentists are still in Quebec. I still do shopping in Quebec. I go to Costco in Quebec. So Anne and I left Quebec in the year 2000 because we just had enough. And as Robin knows, we lived with armed bodyguards for quite a few years because of my activism. And it just became too much. And it just wasn't worth the hassle. So I have both feet still planted in Quebec and in Ontario. We live in an area that's very bilingual, more French than English, and we speak French a lot every day. So we feel comfortable where we're at. And here's the problem with Quebec. Quebec has no idea where it's at. So we have these leaders like Yves Blanchette who are out pounding the drum, saying the same thing they were saying 30 or 40 years ago. And nothing's ever changed. People are bored with it. So I don't know if he's going to even be able to retain the amount of members that they already have. They have 32, I think 32. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep more than a dozen or more or so. I don't know where the others are going to go because the NDP doesn't play in Quebec at all. Green Party, forget about. The Conservatives, they have I don't know, 10 or 12, I think 10 members in Quebec. Maybe they'll gain a few. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in Quebec. I think a lot of people are going to stay home. Quebecers are the most exciting Canadians because of their passion. They understand their politics. They know what they want. They've got a great deal in Canada. You know, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? So there shouldn't be an election. There's no reason for it. Trudeau's making all kinds of promises that he's been making anyways for quite a while, and he hasn't delivered on any of them for Quebec. And now we have O'Toole going out there making all kinds of promises that he probably has no intentions of keeping. So in Quebec, Trudeau's not a well-liked guy. Blanchette's not a player. So I don't know what's going to happen. In Ontario,
Howard,
I'm sorry?
You have a premier there, Legault.
Francois Legault.
He's described as a nationalist, but not a separatist, whatever that means. And you also have a situation, and I've seen polling that in Quebec right now, people are very nationalist, but there isn't a huge appetite for separation, which of course is one of the bloc, stock, and trades. And at the same time, another stream that's going on are some big protests that have been taking place where people are upset about having to get these vaccine passports. Now, John and I are both in favor of vaccine passports in BC because we want to nudge another at least 10% to get into an area where we're close to having herd immunity. But I know in Quebec, there's been a lot of opposition. So what is in the minds of the average Quebecer right now in terms of all of these streams? It's not about separation. So what is this election about?
It's about nothing. It's about Trudeau getting, certainly I don't hope for it, but he was hoping to be able to get a majority. But it's not just Quebec, by the way. I have, Anna and I, my wife and I, have had both vaccines. And if they come out with a booster, we will probably opt for that as well. But I really, really don't believe in vaccine passports. I don't believe we have too much government. We have too much government control. The last thing I want to do is to have some government agent or some jerk who's appointed by the government to stop me and say, show me your papers. That's what they did in Nazi Germany. That's what they did.
Yeah, but how are they using that? That analogy is not very fair when you're trying to protect everyone's health. Nazi Germany, especially from somebody like yourself who's such an opponent of that mindset.
It's a 100% fair analogy, and I'll tell you why. Because once a snowball starts rolling down the hill, it's only a little snowball. By the time it gets to the base of the hill, it's an avalanche. And that's exactly where we're going. It's not just with vaccine mandates, it's with everything. No one empowered the government to shut down our economy. Nobody empowered the government to keep us locked down in our homes. Now, I'm not a doctor. We talked about this yesterday. I'm not a scientist. I read as much as I possibly can. Nobody seems to agree on anything other than we've shut down the economy. We've destroyed a big portion of our economy. I don't even know what our national debt is any longer. I don't think anybody knows what our debt is any longer.
So Howard, I'd like to just go at you with this vaccine passport thing, okay? So there is yourself stating you're against it. Okay, fine. There are some percentage of people in Canada, I don't know what they are. Are they the 20 people running around Trudeau throwing rocks at him? I don't know. But how do you get us out of this pandemic if you don't insist that people get vaccinated? This is the dilemma.
So we were told a year and a half ago, no, let's just stay in place. And in 3 weeks, everything will be fine. They lied to us. Then we were told if we wear masks, it'll be fine. That didn't work out. Then we're told if we get vaccinated, we don't have to wear masks. Well, that didn't work out. And now we're told that we have to have these vaccine passports.
Here's why it didn't work out. It didn't work out because of the things you just stated. People didn't do them. They didn't wear masks. They didn't do social distancing. They didn't stay at home.
That's not true.
It certainly is.
So I used an example last night with Robin. The most vaccinated country in the world is Israel. And like I told Robin, the most important part of Israel is the Israeli Defense Force. And it's the most treasured part, the most important part. If the IDF ever goes down, then Israel is a lost cause. So based on that, Israel vaccinated every one of its military members, every one, the only country in the world to do that. And it was mandated, and they all got 2 vaccines. And now Israel has another rampant surge of this virus. I don't think people really understand what this virus is.
But the difference is, Howard, and not to say that you're incorrect in what you're talking about in Israel or other places, but Israel got their vaccines very early in the process compared to a lot of countries. Certainly they got their vaccines double before we did. And what the difference is, yes, there is a spike in numbers because of the variants, but not as many people are going to hospital. If the vast majority of people in our hospitals now that are in serious condition because of COVID are people that haven't been vaccinated. There's a few that have been vaccinated that are in hospital, but the vast majority, over 90%, are people that have not been vaccinated. So that's causing a lot of stress in our hospital system.
I'm not a libertarian. I believe we need rules and regulations. I believe we need government. I don't believe we need so much government or too much government or the amount of government that we have. But let me tell you something. If I was worried about getting the virus, which of course I am or was, I would get vaccinated. So the promise is you get vaccinated, you're okay. Well, if you don't want to get vaccinated, I'm still okay. Well, that was the promise. So you want to get sick, it's on you. It's like the seasonal flu, which kills a lot of people as well.
But it's on all of us, though, Howard, for those people refusing to get vaccinated, and they jam up our hospitals, and it's a huge public expense. There's other people that are having trouble getting surgeries or getting treatment because the hospital beds are jammed with people with COVID.
So I have friends who are in medicine, who are doctors, who work in nursing, and they're telling me that their ICU units are just jammed, and not with COVID patients. These are people who've been denied medical treatments over the last year and a half because the doctors didn't want to treat people who had things like cancer and heart disease and so many other things. Now, all of a sudden, they better be treated or they're going to die. So, look, I don't believe our government. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I think our government will do and say whatever they want to say to get elected, stay elected. I think a lot of people like the idea, hey, look at all the control I have. Why should I give it up? I can see it in Canada, in the United States, all over the world. What's happening now in Australia is just egregious. The fact that they have the military now that are arresting people, even in their own homes, because of a violation. And people who were out surfing in the United States, whether it was in California or whatever, were ticketed because they were surfing without a mask. I mean,
Well, if we're going to start playing world politics, I think we could go down a lot of trails. Let's pull it back to Canada a little bit, Howard, just if you don't mind. I mean,
don't mind.
And there are other issues besides COVID, although we think that's a pretty big one. I guess I'm a little surprised to hear that you're not more enthusiastic about the Conservatives, considering I know some of your political views tend to be a little more, say, right wing.
So when you and I first met, it was over a book that I wrote called Bastards. And I wrote that book 25 years ago and it became a national bestseller. And it shocked the hell out of me because I figured maybe it'd sell a couple of hundred copies because it was on the radio and a lot of my listeners might buy it out of sympathy. But it turned out that it became extremely popular. We had 3 printings. And the separatists thought that this was all about them. A lot of the English media, as well the French media, thought, well, this was all about the separatists in Quebec. And it wasn't. And in my opening, the foreword to the book, and I make it very clear, this is not about Quebec separatists. This is about all of our politicians and all of our media. They really are truly bastards. And the reason being is that they'll tell us what they think we want to know, or our media, to a great extent, have become propagandists. It bothers me enormously that Trudeau went out and took $600 million to give to our media, whether it's CTV or Global or CBC. Well, CBC gets $1 billion plus anyways. So it bothered me that. So I call this book Bastards because I've lost all trust in the media. I've lost all trust in our government because our government will do and say whatever they need to do and say to get elected. And they'll continue to do and say once they're elected what they think they'll need to stay elected. And I looked at O'Toole, who made a lot of conservative promises. Now, I'm not a hardcore rank and file conservative, but I am conservative. I think our government spent too much money. I think our governments are far too big. I think our governments are far intrusive. And so here comes O'Toole saying all the right conservative things. Now, I knew that he was a red Tory. He wasn't a hardcore Tory, but that was okay. He was never my favorite at all. And all of a sudden, all the things that he stood for, he stands against. Why would I want to vote for this guy?
So, Howard, I just want to briefly comment on the media. Of course, we're on the media. It's just a digital media, us three. And in fact, the feelings you have towards media are reflective of a media, historically, that's always been that way.
I don't think so.
Politicians always do this. Well,
yeah,
why would they now change? Like, this is what, like, I'm like, what, are we surprised that people say what they want to get voted? Well,
it's a lot different today. It really is not. You're right. The media has always been one-sided, one way or the other. But they've been a lot more just. They've been a lot. They were shamed over the years into being relatively honest. The politicians will always try to get whatever they could. But I remember a time when we called our politicians, certainly our ministers, honorable. That's right. Yeah. And I can't imagine. I don't remember the last time a minister in Canada resigned because he or she screwed up, and so that's out the window. A lot has changed. So if you look at social media, for example, that didn't exist before. If you look at the government turning around, Trudeau turning around and saying, well, I'm going to give you $600 million. Well, you don't get anything for nothing. I mean, you got to pay a price for it. That price might be your silence, or it might be your approval, whether you approve or not. So
let's shift it over again, and still sticking with the media, if that's okay, Howard. And you touched on CBC, which we know has always been supportive of, in italics, progressive politics.
Yeah.
And John and I happen to live in one of the great heartlands of progressive politics. Our mayor couldn't be more, in italics, progressive.
My green shirt is in the
laundry. We live in
laundry.
the granny state, and Vancouver Island is very strongly NDP. The NDP is extremely strong in British Columbia and will do well in this election. I'd like to know, and I know these are not your people, so this will be, if you're being this hard on the Conservatives, I can just imagine how things are going to go in terms of the NDP. But it strikes me what's happening is Jagmeet Singh is a very good communicator. He does speak good French, although that may not help him in Quebec. But is that splitting that progressive vote, which could give Aaron O'Toole a victory on the 20th?
So I'm generally pretty good at prognosticating. Not this time. That's a disappointment too, because I'm sure you would have liked me to come out and say, "Oh, this guy's going to win."
We're going to ask you anyway.
Yeah. So I think that O'Toole has a chance to win a minority government, maybe even a majority government. So when you talk about those 20 people who are throwing stones at Trudeau, for example, it's a lot more than 20 people. That's an outlier. People right across this country. Now, Ann and I we spend 6 months a year in Texas and 6 months.
We don't like to see that kind of behavior in Canada, do we, Howard? People throwing rocks at the Prime Minister? I mean, really?
I don't want to see people giving one of our politicians the finger. I think that's very impolite, and I don't think that's the way you communicate. Throwing rocks, to me, is a criminal offense. So we're on page. However, that doesn't mean that these people are a minority. They're not. So I spent 8 months this year in British Columbia because I couldn't get into the States for the winter. And if they don't open the border in a week from now, or a week and a half from now, we're probably coming back to British Columbia again. But so I had a chance to meet and speak with an awful lot of British Columbians, Albertans as well, and some from Saskatchewan, but a lot of British Columbians. And you know that I like to speak to people. I don't debate any longer. It's not worth it. I'm getting too old to get into these shouting matches. So, but I hear what they're saying, and I can't find a region in Canada that's impressed with Trudeau, or likes Trudeau, or really wants Trudeau. He's got his following. He's got his 20% that'll stay with him no matter what. So I think a lot of people might not show up. It might be one of the least attended elections in Canada this year. There's no reason to go out there. So I've almost made my mind up. I'm going to vote for Bernier, and the reason being, he's got the conservative values that I'm looking for. He doesn't have a chance in hell of winning anything. I don't think he's going to win his own seat. We talked about that yesterday. In the last election, I forecast that he was not going to win his own seat. A lot of people got really angry at me. They said, got to give him a chance. Well, it's not the way it works in Canada. You have to get votes. So,
Howard, I want to talk about, we're kind of probably getting to near the end of our interview, but I can't leave you without asking the following question. So we sit out here in the West, and I don't know what the percentage is. It seems like a lot. And by the time the election night hits Manitoba, it's over.
Yep.
And we're so, I was going to swear, angry.
Merci pour la visite, c'est fini.
So we've talked about Quebec. We haven't talked about the Maritimes, but we've talked now about BC. Tell us about Ontario. What this election's going to be, won or lost, no matter by whom, by that. What do they call that? 411, the Toronto
416.
416.
Yeah.
What's going to go on in Ontario? They've got a vaccine passport implementation. That should be good for Trudeau.
Well, so the Premier of Ontario also ran as a Conservative, and I think he's actually now campaigning for Trudeau. I really do. I think he's endorsed Trudeau.
These Fords, they never.
I think he's staying out of the election, isn't he? I think Doug Ford's been pretty quiet by Doug Ford standards.
So I know Doug Ford personally. He and I have had business together. And when Doug Ford's brother was alive, Doug Ford was a different kind of guy. So, he's a tremendous disappointment to probably everyone in Ontario who is a Conservative, even a mild Conservative who voted for him. So I don't think he's got a second term in his future. However, that said, the Ontarians don't like the vaccine mandate because Ford came out and said there'll never be a vaccine mandate in Ontario. Well, he lied. Had he come out right at the beginning and said, we might have to do this, people might be upset. But when you say we're never going to do this, and then you do it.
Yeah. I agree.
This is what Trudeau did as well. We're not going to do this. Boom, we did it. We won't leave any Canadians in Afghanistan. And look at that. We don't even know how many Canadians are left in Afghanistan. Could be as many as 1,000, maybe 2,000. Who knows? Can't believe anything they say because whatever they say turns out to be inaccurate anyways. I think Ontario can go either way, by the way. So if Ontario splits a bit more for the Conservatives, which I think is a real possibility, then Trudeau loses. If Trudeau gets a minority government, I'll take that as a bit of a victory. If Trudeau gets his ass kicked and O'Toole, who I'm not a fan of because he's reversed on himself on everything the party stood for, I'll take that as a victory as well. There's got to be something that I can look forward to. I think that's one of the biggest problems, John, with Canadian politics, is that I don't know if there's any politician that's giving any of us anything to look forward to.
Wow. Okay, now I'll give you that. Yes. Great interview. Great guest. 23 years, 23 years that you've lasted. It certainly to me, it feels like yesterday because I just met him just about an hour ago. But, and as you could tell, there are many things I disagree with him on. And we shared our passion, and it'll be fascinating to see if his viewpoints come to fruition. Gosh, a couple of weeks. Oh my God, I can't believe it. And but most importantly, these things are decided, generally speaking, in Quebec and Ontario. Can't wait to see how that unfolds on September 20th.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. And I agree that, you know, Howard cuts both ways. I don't agree with everything Howard thinks, but part of the joy in life is learning how other people think and having a discussion. At least you can learn, even if you don't agree. And I hope people take that as something to think about as they listen to the thoughts of Howard Galganov. And certainly next week, we're going to give you lots of food for thought as well, because we have the University of Victoria political scientist Michael Prince will be in the Rumble Room to talk about both the English language leaders debate, which is taking place, and the election in general, and who he thinks is going to win on the 20th. So Dr. Michael Prince, who I haven't spoken to on any format either for many, many years. And it's so great to be able to have this show, to be able to reconnect with people that I've really enjoyed speaking to through many, many years of broadcasting. So I think he'll be worth the price of admission when the Rumble Room returns next week.
Absolutely. Somehow or another, I had occasion to talk to Michael on CFAX on Sunday mornings when I did that for a while. I can't even imagine how I ever did that. I mean, being awake at 8 in the morning, I think our 4 listeners love the dialogue. If you love the dialogue, please think about joining, as you can see them emerging on top and bottom of the screen. Absolutely. And sharing, liking. Tell you something though, if you really want to get in the mix, go jump on our TikTok page, which at this stage is my page. We're having arguments like you wouldn't believe about the stuff that you and I are talking about during these shows, Robin. So you want a civil discussion? Bah, listen to CBC. You want a rumbling discussion? Listen to us. You want a crazy out of control discussion? Link to our TikTok page. And I remain, as always, the Croatian sensation, Johnny Juris.
And I'm Rockin' Robin Adair, and rumble on.